So if you watched my March reading wrap up and April TBR video, which I will link up here in a card, you'll know that I was so excited for all of the books that I wanted to read in April. I had a fantastic lineup. I was so ready for April to begin. And I'm gonna be honest, April didn't fully disappoint. I did have one that just like did not hit the mark, but for the most part, I really enjoyed what I read, as well as one absolute banger of a 2025 favorite this early in the year. And I'm honestly just so excited to chat about them all. So let's just dive right into it. So hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you are new here, and let's dive in with the first book I read in April. So the first book I read in April was Swordheart by T. Kingfisher, and if you're not familiar, Swordheart is about our main character Hala, who is a widow, and she finds herself trapped by unwanted relatives when her uncle passes away and leaves his estate to her. Unbeknownst to her, she later in the evening draws a sword and unleashes Sarkis, who has been stuck in said sword, and together they embark on a journey that is both quirky, low stakes, and kind of interesting, if cozy fantasy is your thing. And I honestly had a good time reading it. I think my favorite thing about Swordheart was that our main character was older. Hala is our main character, and she is 36. She's not 19, she's not 20, she's not 24, she is 36. She's also not a Mary Sue pick-me kind of character either. She truly is... she's like a regular person. And honestly, that's something that I really found to be endearing about Hala. I really liked that she was very different than most of our main characters who train and are ready to leap into battle to save countries and lands and titles, and like Hala just wants her, in-laws to leave her alone. I mean, if that's not relatable, I genuinely don't know what is. And I did like Sarkis, but he was a little bit cookie cutter. He was a little bit one-dimensional, especially next to Hala, who definitely felt a lot more fleshed out. But I did like the romance subplot, and like I said, it is a very low-stakes cozy fantasy, so if that's your thing, I definitely think you should give Swordheart a chance. There is a serious lack of world building, but I don't know if that's because Swordheart, which I later learned, is set in the Paladin's Grace world, so maybe it would have made more sense had I read those books first. I don't know. If you have read those books, definitely let me know in the comments. But there was a serious lack of world building. The romance, like I said, was okay. There was a good amount of slow burn and tension. It really didn't hold my attention because, like I said, Sarkis was a little one-dimensional, and so sometimes the romance just felt a little flat and like, oh yeah, I read that before. But for the most part, I had a really fun time reading this book. I gave it 3.75 stars out of 5 stars, and I'm going to keep that rating because, like I said, I enjoyed it, but it's probably not going to end up on my favorite books of 2025. But I do recommend it. Like I said, low stakes, cozy fantasy with a romance subplot. Swordheart. The next book that I read in April was Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas, and depending on the reading order that you read Throne of Glass, you either read this third or fourth. I read it fourth, and I really enjoyed it. I actually could not wait to get into this one coming off The Crown of Midnight, but I decided to read The Assassin's Blade third, so this had to wait, which was very disappointing because it was very good. I very much enjoyed it. But if you're not familiar with the series, or you are familiar with the series, I'm kind of struggling on how to summarize these books without like spoiling anything for anyone. But essentially in this book, Selena has left Rifthold. She's sent on her mission that the king has given her, and we meet a whole host of new characters. My boy Dorian is not doing well. But I was very excited by the new characters we meet. We meet Rowan and Manon. I'm going to say that's not a spoiler because I'm not going to say anything more about them, but I genuinely loved their introduction and their roles in this story, and I cannot wait just to see how it continues unfolding. Also, just like the other books, at the end of this, I am unwell. I did not finish this book. This book finished me, okay? But I will admit, like most people, I was not a fan of Rowan at first. I didn't like his methodology, I guess you could say. I kind of wish he had taken the time to learn a little bit more about Selena before just like making all of his assessments and judgments. And I really felt for Selena in this book, but I also really enjoyed her growth. And I know I've kind of touched on Selena's growth in other books, but no. Selena, so far in the series, I'm just gonna adjust this. But Selena definitely so far in the series has had the most character growth, in my opinion, in Heir of Fire. We see a whole nother side of her. Literally, that's kind of a spoiler. Sorry. But it's more of an if you know spoiler. So if you don't know, it wasn't really a spoiler. But we get to see a whole new side of Selena, which is really interesting. We also get to know a little bit more about her past. We meet Queen Maeve, who is distantly related to Selena, and her character was kind of a letdown. I think Sarah J. Maas has this issue where she writes these like really scary characters, and then you meet them and they're just like, I'm a bad guy. it's like, he's a bad guy. You know, Queen May was kind of a letdown as a character, and her whole arc that had to do with Selena, I wasn't really a fan of, but I liked it for Selena and I liked it for Rowan. And I also mentioned Manon and Dorian. So Manon is a witch, and she's a Blackbeak, and the king is essentially starting a new like faction or whatever that has to do with the witches. I don't really want to say too much more, but I really liked getting to know Manon, and I really like her. I have a feeling I'm going to end up obsessed with her. And the last POV we got was Dorian's, which at first I was kind of bored by. Like, I didn't really get it. I was just like, why does this feel like Dorian's just filming a slice of life vlog for us? Like, I don't get it. But then I started to put the pieces together. And I was like, yeah, I should be paying attention. I should be paying to these parts of the book, because even though there were a few of them and they seemed more mundane than anything else, you had to read between the lines for Dorian's POV. But the end with Dorian? Oh, my Dorian, my sweet, sweet Dorian. I did start Queen of Shadows, but I took a brief pause to read The Bridge Kingdom. So I'm slowly getting back into Queen of Shadows because I need to make sure Dorian is okay. Like, I'm very concerned for him. And Cole, I almost didn't even mention Cole. So we also meet Adion, who is Selena's relative. I didn't listen to the audiobook for this one, so I don't know how to pronounce everyone's names. But we meet him. He's interesting. I'm excited to see where his storyline goes. And Cole kind of won me back over a little bit in this book. I actually started to kind of understand a little bit more of his like motivations and opinions. I definitely was not a fan of him in Crown of Midnight. I just wanted him to like go away. But he's kind of likable again. I'm starting to understand him a bit more now, which I appreciate. But honestly, 5 out of 5 stars, because so far in the series, this has been my favorite read of the series, and I'm genuinely so excited to just continue reading and see what else happens. The next book on the list is one that I am utterly obsessed with. I didn't even read this book. I devoured it in less than 24 hours, and that is Enchantra by Callie Smith. This book is technically the second book in the Wicked Games series with... Let me grab it. Hold on. With Phantasma being the first book in the Wicked Games series, and Phantasma focuses on Ophelia and Blackwell, and Ophelia pretty much goes into Phantasma, which is a deadly game hosted by devils to find her sister, Genevieve, who is the main character of Enchantra. And you don't have to read Phantasma before you read Enchantra, but if you want a little bit more background on Genevieve and her relationship with Ophelia, and to understand who Blackwell is, because you don't get anything about who Blackwell is in Enchantra, because it's not about him, then you should read Phantasma first. I had a really fun time reading Phantasma. It is very spicy. It did take me a minute to get into it, but honestly, once I got into it, I was in. I was sold, okay? Also, Ophelia will always have a special place in my heart as an OCD eldest daughter, because I feel you, girl. I feel you. But anyway, back to Enchantra. So like I said, Enchantra focuses on Genevieve, who is Ophelia's younger sister, and she finds letters from her late mother between her and someone named Barrington Silver, and she believes that Barrington can help her kind of understand more about herself. She's feeling very lost. She's feeling very confused. You know, Ophelia is the eldest daughter, so when their mother passed away, Ophelia basically took over the family business as a necromancer, leaving Genevieve to kind of feel like, what do I do with myself now? So Barrington invites Genevieve to his estate, and when she arrives, she meets his lovely son, Rowington, aka Rowan, who pretty much tells her to F off, and Genevieve doesn't. She gets herself roped into the family's deadly game of hide and seek that they play every year because they are essentially cursed. I'll just explain it that way because it's simpler. And in order to survive the game, she has to marry Rowan, because married couples have a better chance of winning the games, and whoever wins the game gets to basically stay out of hell for a year. And so Rowan jumps at the chance, and Genevieve obviously is like, no, I don't want to marry you, but fine, whatever, I will. And pretty much chaos ensues in the best possible way. And it's funny because April kind of felt like the month of Rowans. Rowan and Heir of Fire, Rowan and Enchantra. I don't know which one I liked better. I'm probably going to end up liking Rowan, Sarah J. Maas's Rowan, better, just because we're going to get so much more of him. This book also set up the third book, or well, it did a good job of hinting at the plot for the third book, which makes me very excited because honestly, like, the Wicked Game series is quickly becoming one of my favorite fantasy romance series. There's a lot of spice in this. It had some of my favorite tropes, marriage of convenience, my wife. And honestly, even if you don't think too hard about the plot, like I just love the found family aspect for Genevieve because she really is feeling lost. She really is looking for a place where she feels like she belongs and she fits in. And Rowan, even though it doesn't seem that way at first, he's kind of dealing with the same thing. Like even though he has 6 other siblings, he also kind of feels like he's invisible and he's lost in the crowd. And it isn't until Genevieve comes around that he realizes that, you know, she's able to see him for who he truly is, and she still cares for him despite everything. And I think that's really beautiful between them, not to get sappy, but it is very spicy. I am a bigger fan of Rowan than I am of Blackwell, and that's nothing against Blackwell. I also love the animal companions in both books. Poe still has my heart, but Umbra is creeping up there. And if you thought the scene, how do I say this without spoiling it? If you thought the scene in Phantasma with Blackwell and Ophelia, and you know the ceiling situation was hot, let me tell you, this one has mirrors. And Rowan actually uses his shadows, but let me stop, because there obviously were faults with this book. The games felt very lacking. Like, how many times can you play hide and seek? And I know that there were slight variations to each game of hide and seek that they played, but at the end of the day, like, it was still hide and seek. Like, they weren't really as, I don't know the word that I'm looking for, nuanced maybe as they could have been, but like I said, they were very repetitive. But honestly, I wasn't reading for the hide and seek games. I was reading for Rowington Silver, okay? Also, Genevieve is a plus-size female main character, so if you are looking for a plus-size representation, I would like to present to you Genevieve Grimm, or Genevieve Silver, if you will. But honestly, I just love this book so much. It was such a vibe. Phantasma was such a vibe. Like, if you don't think too hard about it, you will enjoy it. Like, it had me in a chokehold. Similarly to Heir of Fire, I didn't finish this book. This book finished me, bro, like in the best possible way. 6 out of 5 stars. Like 6 stars out of 5 stars for Enchantra. I loved it so much. If you have not read the Wicked Game series and you're interested in fantasy romance with spice and paranormal characters, and please, for the love of God, read the Wicked Game series and then come back here and tell me every single one of your thoughts, because I need someone to yap about these books with. But let's move on to the next one. The next book up on the list I actually don't have a copy of because I listened to the audiobook and I didn't want to waste money on a copy of the book, and that is The Perfect Divorce by Geneva Rose. And if you couldn't tell by how lackluster I sound compared to talking about Enchantra, I did not like The Perfect Divorce, and I did read The Perfect Marriage, and that's why I read The Perfect Divorce. And let me tell you, I should have just left it alone because I didn't like The Perfect Marriage. I don't know why I thought I would like The Perfect Divorce, but in case you're unfamiliar, The Perfect Marriage is the first book in the series. I believe it's going to be a 3-book series, and no, I will not be reading the next book. I'm not touching this series again. But in The Perfect Marriage, we meet Sarah and Adam. Adam is a writer, Sarah is a high-powered attorney, and one day Adam goes up to like their cabin with his mistress. He wakes up and she's dead. And the book pretty much then goes into figuring out what happened, who's to blame. At the end of the book, Adam is arrested and sentenced to death, where it is then, oh no spoilers. I'm going to leave it there. So we pick up in The Perfect Divorce 10 years later, where Sarah is now married to Bob, who is a fellow attorney, and they have a daughter together, Summer. If you read this book and you know where Summer got her name from, like, Geneva, why? But I didn't like Bob. I didn't really like Sarah. I didn't really like anyone in this book, to be honest with you. The plot twists were very obvious from the beginning of the book, just by the way the characters acted and their motivations. And it was just like, come on. I think the only character who was likable in this book was Summer, and that's because she's literally like 9 years old. Yeah, I wasn't a fan. There was a little bit of like smut at the end that was so unnecessary, and I wasn't a fan of it. And like I said, I did listen to the audiobook that had like 6 narrators, and can we please, like, audiobook recording companies, publishing houses who hire narrators for books, can we please, for the love of God, stop hiring Brittany Presley? I cannot stand her voice. And luckily she only played a minor like role in this book, so I didn't have to hear her every chapter, because the book is told between, I believe, 4 point of views. There's Sarah, Bob, the sheriff, and the character's name I don't want to say because spoilers. But it's about 4 POVs, and luckily, like I said, it wasn't a lot, but it was enough. It was enough. I did like the sheriff's voice. He had a very like deep rumbly voice. That was fairly pleasant, but otherwise I didn't like any of the other narrators. And I will say, the guy who narrated Bob sounded like such a douchebag. Like, he did such a great job of capturing the essence of Bob's character. But other than that, I really did not have a fun time. Unfortunately, this book did not finish me. I did finish it, and it gets 2.5 stars out of 5 stars, and I think that is generous because I really didn't like it. So maybe I should just give it 1 star. But that feels mean. I'm gonna leave it at 2.5 stars out of 5 stars. Either way, I didn't like this book. And if you read The Perfect Marriage and you didn't like that book, definitely do not read The Perfect Divorce, because it doesn't get better. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So let's move on to my May TBR. So the first book up on my May TBR that I actually did start reading is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I really don't like this cover, but here we are. Also, this book is very thick, but I am about 20% into the audiobook. The female narrator I'm not the biggest fan of. She's a little like whiny and it's a little grating, but after a while the like whininess, you get used to it and it kind of fades away. The male narrator, on the other hand, apparently he voiced Rhysand in the ACOTAR audiobooks, and I kind of want to listen to the ACOTAR books now. But like I said, I'm 20% in, and honestly not a lot has happened, but not much has happened, and I'm still waiting to like actually get details on things because I'm still very confused. Like, there's still a lot of setup that has to happen, but I'm enjoying what I'm listening to so far. I'm trying my best to stick to the audiobook, but I do think there may come a point, probably closer to the end, where I just decide to pick up the book and straight up finish it. But I'm liking what I'm reading so far. I will definitely finish this probably within the next few days because I'm really enjoying it. The other 2 books on my May TBR actually haven't come out yet, but the first is A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle Jensen, which is publishing on May 13th, and that is the sequel to A Fate Inked in Blood. And I'm very excited. If you haven't read A Fate Inked in Blood, I definitely recommend it. But you're in luck because A Fate Inked in Blood has one of the worst cliffhangers that I've read since like Heartless Hunter and some of the Sarah J. Maas books. So you're in luck because you won't have to wait. So if you haven't read A Fate Inked in Blood yet, I would definitely wait and read it closer to the publishing date of May 13th. So that way you can literally just jump right into the next book. And the third book on my May TBR is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Honestly, Rachel Gillig is just like an auto-buy author for me now. I loved the Shepherd King duology so freaking much that if she writes it, I want to read it. And that one actually comes out on my birthday, May 20th. So that's just a birthday present to myself. So I'm very excited to grab copies of both of those once they are published and dive into them. Those books I'll probably read. Either I'll devour them and read them before the end of May, or The Night and the Moth I will read going into June, but I've pretty much cleared my TBR for the end of May for those books because I really want to read them. So I'm excited. We'll see what happens. But honestly, April was such a good month of reading. I'm very excited to see what I read in May. I unfortunately am a slow reader with a full-time job, so I don't get to read nearly as much as I want to. I have kind of been getting in the habit of reading little bits throughout the week, and then Friday night into Saturday, just like completely like demolishing a whole book. I don't know where that's coming from. I think it's just because I can't read as much during the week that when I finally have time on Friday into Saturday, I just like nothing else matters. I'm reading. Leave me alone. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just thought it was an interesting kind of like pattern that I was kind of noticing. And I'm thinking about doing like how many pages I read in a week, just because I really don't read a lot during the week, and then I read a lot during the weekend, so I'm toying around with it. It's definitely something that I'm considering doing, especially because if you missed my community post, for the summer, I'm switching to every other Friday uploads. I really want to enjoy the summer. I have other projects going on, and so I think with the decrease in traffic because of the summer, it'll just be the perfect time to kind of pull back just a teeny tiny bit, and then in September go back to the every Friday posts. And at the end of each month, I will post a kind of like video content calendar of the videos that I'm posting and when for the next month, because it'll probably just be 2 videos a month, but I may throw in like a third one just because I've gotten so into the routine of filming every weekend that it almost feels weird to like not. But like I said, we'll see. That's a that's a maybe. But May is shaping up to be a fantastic month of reading. There are so many books right now that I want to read. It's a little overwhelming, but it's also very exciting. Like, it's so much better than being in a slump and not wanting to read anything. Like, there's so much possibility on the horizon. Anyway, I'm all talked out. I'm literally starting to talk gibberish. So as always, I'm interested to know what you read in April, and if you've read any of the books that I talked about on this list, please definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. And otherwise, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.